She thought she finally found her real father, but the DNA test said otherwise. And when Dr. Phill read the second report, the cameras went silent. The story you're about to hear wasn't scripted, rehearsed, or planned. It began as a joyful reunion and ended as a moment so raw, producers chose not to air it. Because what that DNA test revealed didn't just rewrite a family tree. It broke the meaning of family itself. The studio lights burned bright that morning, the kind of light that makes every tear look like glass. You could feel the tension before a single word was spoken. Emily sat on stage beside a man named Tom Harris, a retired firefighter with gentle eyes and the rough hands of someone who had spent his life saving others. She believed he was her biological father. For months, the two had been building a connection, piece by fragile piece. This episode of Dr. Phill was meant to be about healing, about hope found after years of loneliness. The audience smiled as they hugged. There were whispers of, finally, a happy ending. Then, the envelope arrived. Dr. Phill held it up like a verdict. He spoke slowly, the way he always does when he knows what's inside will change everything. "These are the DNA results," he said, "and I want everyone to take a breath before we continue." Emily looked at Tom, squeezing his hand. He smiled back, certain. He'd already seen one report, one that confirmed the match. But this was a second test, verified by an independent lab. When Dr. Phill opened the paper, his voice faltered for the first time in the entire taping. He stared down, then back up. The words came out quiet. "Emily, Tom is not your biological father." A gasp cut through the studio. You could hear the breath leave her lungs. Tom froze, his jaw tightening, confusion spreading across his face. "That can't be right," he whispered. That's not possible." Emily's hands trembled. She shook her head like she could undo the words. "No, that's not. We already did the test." Her voice cracked, breaking the silence. Dr. Phill looked off camera, something he rarely ever does. The crew shifted uncomfortably. One of the producers signaled for a break, but he waved it off. "We're not cutting yet," he said. And in that moment, the energy in the room shifted. It wasn't a show anymore. It was real life unraveling on stage. Tom's voice grew soft. "I wanted this to be true," he said. "I really did." Emily turned toward him, eyes wide, searching for any sign that this was still fixable. But the truth was sitting right there on that sheet of paper, heavy as a stone. Dr. Phill leaned forward, his tone almost fatherly now. "Sometimes the truth doesn't heal right away," he said quietly. "Sometimes it breaks before it builds." Emily's mascara streaked as tears ran down her face. She whispered, "Then who is he?" But no one answered. Not yet. The show went to commercial, but the story didn't stop. Behind the curtain, producers scrambled. How could two different DNA tests tell two opposite truths? Who sent the second sample? And why? One producer looked at Dr. Phill and said, "This isn't just a mistake. Someone knew something. The truth wasn't just wrong. It was impossible." And what happened after the cameras stopped never aired. Until now. Because the real story began after the lights went out. If one document could destroy your entire identity, who would you become? 3 weeks before the studio lights and the headlines, there was only silence, the kind of silence that follows you through empty rooms. Emily Grace sat at her kitchen table with a coffee gone cold, staring at an unopened DNA kit. The logo on the box promised answers. What she didn't realize was that it would also unleash secrets her family had buried decades ago. Her mother's handwriting still haunted her. On the back of an old photograph was a single sentence. "Find him. He deserves to know." No name. No explanation. Just that. Emily kept that photo taped to her mirror for years. Every birthday, every Christmas, she'd whisper, "I'm still looking, Mom." After her mother's death, Emily felt untethered, like her roots had been cut. She'd grown up in foster homes, moving from one family to another, always wondering where she truly belonged. So when the DNA results came back a month later with one close match, Thomas Harris, age 58, Austin, Texas, she cried for nearly an hour. Tom was a retired firefighter, a widower. He lived alone in a quiet suburb with a dog named Cooper. When Emily reached out, She expected a polite response, maybe a short message. But Tom called her that night. They talked for 6 hours straight. They compared Freckles' favorite foods, even the way they both hated thunderstorms. It felt like the universe was stitching something back together. For weeks, they spoke daily. He sent her childhood photos, old firefighter stories, even a photo of her baby picture, framed on his mantle. "I don't care what a piece of paper says," he told her once. "If you're mine, you're mine." The Dr. Phill team reached out after Emily shared her story online. A reunion story about forgiveness, closure, and finding home. She hesitated at first, but Tom convinced her. "Maybe our story helps someone else," he said. "Someone still searching." The show arranged flights, hotel rooms, and hair and makeup for the big reveal. The producers told them it would be beautiful, a story of hope after hardship. Emily even rehearsed what she'd say to her mom on camera. "I found him, Mom. You were right." But 3 days before the taping, an email arrived. Subject line: DNA confirmation request. It looked routine, just a cross-check for on-air verification. Emily didn't think twice. She signed a consent form and sent back the file. What she didn't know was that another form, sent to the same lab, carried a different signature. Hers, forged. That envelope would become the reason Dr. Phill stopped the cameras. But for now, Emily was still smiling, believing this was her happy ending. Believing that after a lifetime of being unwanted, she finally belonged to someone. She met Tom in person 2 days before the show. When he walked into the restaurant, she burst into tears before even saying hello. They hugged for nearly a minute, like two people who'd been waiting a lifetime for that moment. "You look like your mother," he said softly. It felt right. It felt real. But as they left, a woman across the street, Emily's cousin, Lena, watched quietly from her car. Her expression wasn't joy. It was fear, because Lena knew something Emily didn't. Something hidden in that second envelope. Something that would tear everything apart. Sometimes, the truth isn't waiting to be found. Sometimes, it's waiting to explode. When we chase the truth, do we really want to find it? Or just a version we can live with? Backstage at the studio, hours before the taping, there was an unease that no one could name. Dr. Phil's producers were moving faster than usual, whispering, checking notes, cross-referencing names. One of them clutched an envelope marked confidential, paternal verification update. It wasn't supposed to exist. Dr. Phill had seen hundreds of family stories before, ones with tears, forgiveness, heartbreak. But this one, something fell off. He asked quietly, "Why is there a second report?" The producer just said, "Legal sent it." Emily, unaware of any of this, sat in the makeup chair, smiling nervously as a stylist adjusted her microphone. "I still can't believe this is happening," she said. "After everything, I finally get to tell my mom she was right." The stylist smiled back, but there was something uneasy in her eyes, a heaviness that didn't match Emily's hope. Meanwhile, in the audience, a familiar face had just walked in. Lena, Emily's cousin. She had been the one pushing her to do the DNA test, the one who helped her upload her results, who even paid for the premium analysis. But today, Lena didn't look like a proud relative. She looked haunted. She kept glancing toward the stage, her hands gripping her purse like she was holding on to a secret that might run away. As Dr. Phill prepared to go live, a crew member handed him the second envelope. His eyes narrowed. "I thought this was already verified," he said under his breath. The crew member whispered, "This is the lab's corrected report. They said it was urgent." Dr. Phill placed the envelope on his lap, unopened, as the countdown began. In 5, 4, 3, the opening applause rolled. Emily and Tom waved, nervous but excited. Dr. Phill smiled gently, his tone warm. "Today, we're talking about a reunion that took nearly 3 decades to happen. A daughter's search for her real father, and the man who believes he finally found his little girl." The audience clapped again. Emily beamed. Tom wiped his eyes. Everything felt right, until Dr. Phil's cue card slipped. He bent down to pick it up, and as he did, the sealed envelope on his lap slid open just enough for the top page to peek through. And in that single accidental glance, he saw it. A name. Not Thomas Harris. Mark Henderson. Dr. Phill froze for a fraction of a second, just long enough for a producer to notice. Emily hadn't. The realization hit like a thunderclap. Someone had forged her consent. Lena, sitting just rows away, couldn't look up. Her fingers trembled. Her breathing quickened. She knew the cameras were rolling, but it was too late to stop what was coming. Back on stage, Dr. Phill turned to Emily. "There's something we need to verify before I continue," he said. "Can you confirm? You only took one DNA test?" Emily frowned, confused. "Yeah, just one." "Why?" He nodded slowly. "Because the lab says 2 were submitted." The room shifted. The audience murmured. Tom looked from Emily to Dr. Phill, his face tightening with dread. Lena covered her mouth. A single tear slipped down her cheek. She whispered, "Oh God." Dr. Phill could see it, guilt plain as day. But he didn't push yet. He knew from years of experience that truth needed space to reveal itself. He held up the sealed envelope, looked straight into the camera, and said, "When the results of this second report are opened, someone here will have to answer for it." And in that one sentence, the entire studio changed from a stage to a crime scene of emotions. What Emily didn't know was that the real secret wasn't about who her father was. It was about who had been lying to her since the day she was born. Because the truth didn't come from science. It came from guilt. Would you rather protect a family's peace or expose the truth that could break it? The second report was sitting on Dr. Phil's lap like a live grenade. Everyone in the studio could feel it, that slow, suffocating tension that fills a room right before something breaks. Emily didn't understand why he had gone so quiet. Tom looked like a man trying to do the math on a nightmare. And Lena, she was shaking so badly the cameras almost cut away from her. Then Dr. Phill did something he almost never does. He leaned toward the control booth and said one word, "Stop." The red light on the camera faded. The applause sign went dark. For the first time all morning, the studio went silent. Dr. Phill set the envelope on the table. His voice was low, steady. "I need everyone to know," he said carefully, "what's in here will change this family forever. So before we go back on air, I want to make sure you all understand that choice." Tom's voice cracked. "Choice? What choice?" Dr. Phill looked at Lena. "You know what I mean?" That was it. The dam broke. Lena burst into tears, burying her face in her hands. "I didn't want to hurt anyone," she sobbed. "I thought I was protecting her." Emily turned toward her, confused. "Protecting me from what?" Lena couldn't look up. "From the truth," she whispered. Emily's voice hardened. "What truth, Lena?" Dr. Phill waited. He knew better than to interrupt. Years of experience had taught him that silence can make a lie collapse faster than any question. Lena finally looked up, eyes red, hands trembling. "He's not your father," she said, nodding toward Tom. "And I'm not your cousin." The words didn't make sense at first. The air seemed to thin. Emily blinked, trying to process them. "What are you talking about?" she said, almost laughing from disbelief. Lena swallowed. "I'm your sister." The sound that followed wasn't crying. It was something deeper, a sound only people who've lost the ground beneath them make. Emily pushed her chair back. No, that's not." Dr. Phil's voice cut through gently. "Lena, start from the beginning." She nodded, breath shaking. "My mom, your mom, they were sisters. Mine told me something before she died. She said there was a reason everyone stayed quiet. That your mom had an affair with a man named Mark Henderson." She hesitated. "He was my dad." Emily froze. "So you're saying?" Lena nodded. "We share the same father." The room spun. Tom sat back, devastated. "You mean all this time?" He looked at Emily, tears welling. "I wanted to be your father. I was ready to be." And now, Dr. Phill reached out a hand, calm but firm. "Tom, it doesn't erase what you've built. The love you've shown her isn't gone. It's just redefined." Emily buried her face in her hands. "My mom lied to me my whole life," she whispered. "Why would she do that?" Dr. Phill leaned in. "Because sometimes parents carry secrets thinking they're saving you from pain. But they forget truth delayed is pain multiplied." Lena tried to approach her sister, but Emily pulled away. "You lied to me too," she said through tears. "You sent the test. You forged my name." "I know," Lena said. "I was trying to find closure before you found the wrong answer. I thought I could prepare you, but I made it worse." For the first time since the camera stopped, Dr. Phill looked directly at the crew. "We're not airing this," he said quietly. "Not today. This isn't television. This is real life." No one moved. The cameras lowered. The audience sat in stunned silence. The bright stage lights dimmed until the only illumination came from the soft glow of the monitor behind them. Tom stood up and placed a hand on Emily's shoulder. "Listen," he said gently. "You might not share my blood, but I still see my daughter when I look at you. That hasn't changed." Her eyes filled again, but this time it wasn't anger. It was something closer to grief mixed with gratitude. And then, slowly, she reached out and took his hand. The studio was completely quiet. No applause, no cues, no sound, just the soft hum of the lights and the kind of silence that means that something sacred just happened. When Dr. Phill finally spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Some truths tear people apart," he said, "but others set them free. The hard part is figuring out which one you're holding." The camera stayed off for another 20 minutes. And in those 20 minutes, no one was acting. No one was performing. It was just human beings, broken, stunned, but trying to forgive. Because what had been exposed on that stage wasn't about who fathered who. It was about who had been brave enough to tell the truth and who had been brave enough to face it. And that's where the real show began. Not in front of the audience, but after everyone else had gone home. What do you do when truth feels like betrayal? A week had passed since the cameras went dark. The episode never aired. The network filed it away in a vault labeled confidential, do not broadcast. But for Emily, the real fallout was only beginning. She hadn't spoken to Lena since that day. She couldn't. Every time her phone buzzed, her stomach twisted. The world outside kept moving, but inside, she was stuck in that frozen moment on stage, hearing those same 4 words again and again. "I'm your sister." She couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Everywhere she looked, there were reminders of the story she thought she had, and the truth that had replaced it. Dr. Phill reached out privately. He'd seen this kind of emotional collapse before. He invited her and Lena to return, not for television, but for therapy. "You both deserve to speak your truth," he said, without an audience. Emily almost didn't go. She told herself she didn't owe anyone forgiveness. But something about the way Tom had looked at her that day, that quiet strength in his eyes, made her reconsider. When she arrived at the private studio conference room, the lights were low, the cameras off. It wasn't a set anymore. It was just a circle of chairs and silence. Tom was already there, sitting beside Dr. Phill. Lena sat across from them, her head bowed. The air was thick with everything unspoken. Dr. Phill broke it first. "We're not here to redo what happened," he said gently. "We're here to understand it." Lena lifted her eyes, red and swollen. "I didn't mean for it to happen this way," she said. "My mom made me promise never to tell. But when she was dying, she said, 'Don't let Emily live a lie.'" Emily's voice was small. "Then why didn't you just tell me?" "I wanted to," Lena said. "But every time I tried, you talk about how proud your mom would be. How finding Tom made you feel whole again. And I couldn't take that from you. Not then." Silence again. Then Tom spoke. "You can't undo the truth once it's out," he said, his tone steady. "But you can choose what to do with it." He turned toward Emily. "So what now, kiddo?" Emily wiped her eyes. "I don't know," she whispered. "Part of me wants to disappear. Part of me wants to scream at everyone. But mostly," she paused, voice trembling, "I just want to stop feeling like a mistake." Dr. Phill leaned forward. "You are not a mistake. You are the product of people's choices, yes. But that doesn't define your worth. The truth doesn't make you less. It makes you real." Lena reached into her purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "It's a letter," she said softly. "From my mom. From your mom, too." Emily hesitated, then took it. The paper was yellowed, fragile. The handwriting instantly recognizable, looping, delicate. Her mother's. "My sweet Emily, if you're reading this, then the truth has come out. I was young, scared, and human. But loving you was never a mistake. You were the best part of me. Please don't let my choices make you bitter. Find your peace. Find your father, and tell him I'm sorry." Emily pressed the letter to her chest. For the first time, her tears felt lighter, like release instead of pain. Tom stood, his voice thick with emotion. "I may not be your blood, Emily. But I'll still walk you down the aisle someday, if you'll let me. That broke her. She stood and hugged him, clinging like a child who had finally found something solid. You already did, she whispered. You showed up. Dr. Phill smiled faintly. That right there, he said, that's what family is supposed to sound like. For the first time in weeks, Emily felt a sliver of calm. Maybe forgiveness didn't mean pretending nothing happened. Maybe it meant choosing to move forward despite what did. She turned to Lena. I don't forgive you. Not yet, she said honestly. But I don't hate you either. Maybe one day, we can figure out what we are. Lena nodded through tears. Sisters, she said quietly. Even if it hurts. Dr. Phill ended the session with something that stayed with Emily for months. Some truths divide families, he said. But sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stay. A few weeks later, Emily and Lena began attending therapy together. Their sessions weren't easy. Tears, silence, long drives home without a word. But slowly walls started to fall. Emily eventually agreed to meet Mark Henderson, her biological father, privately, off camera. No audience, no production. Just truth, finally faced head-on. She didn't go looking for a father this time. She went looking for closure. And in doing so, she found something much more powerful, peace. Because family isn't defined by DNA, it's defined by the love that survives it. Is family the blood that creates us, or the people who choose to stay after everything breaks? Months passed. The headlines faded. The episode that once shook the studio never made it to air. But for the people involved, its echoes never stopped. Emily moved into a small apartment on the edge of Austin, a quiet place where she could start over. Her days became slower, softer. She planted flowers on the balcony, bought herself a new journal, and started writing down everything she wished someone had told her sooner. On the first page, she wrote, I used to think truth would save me. But sometimes truth just introduces you to yourself. Tom still called every Sunday, just like a father would. He'd ask if she was eating well, if she was sleeping, if she needed anything. He never once used the phrase used to be. To him, she was still his girl. Lena joined them sometimes, cautiously at first, with awkward silences that slowly turned into shared laughter. They were rebuilding something fragile, but real. The first time all three met again, it wasn't on a stage. It was in Tom's backyard. The Texas sun was dipping low, painting everything gold. Emily watched Tom grill burgers while Lena set the table. For a brief moment, it felt normal. Tom raised his glass. To the family we found, he said. Not the one on paper, the one right here. They all laughed. Emily even smiled. But beneath that smile was reflection, the quiet kind that comes only after you face your worst fears and live to tell the story. Later that night, alone in her apartment, Emily opened her phone and began typing an email to Dr. Phill. The subject line read, Thank you for stopping the cameras. I used to think my story ended with a DNA test, but it didn't. It started there. You showed me that truth doesn't destroy. People do. And when we face it with compassion, we don't just survive it. We grow from it. She hit send, exhaled, and stared out at the quiet city. Somewhere in the distance, a siren echoed, faint, familiar. Weeks later, Dr. Phill mentioned that day in an interview. He didn't name names. He didn't need to. That moment reminded me, he said, truth heals only when we face it together. Otherwise, it just keeps bleeding. The unaired footage became an urban legend among studio staff the day the cameras stopped. Some say it was too emotional for TV. Others say it was too real. But everyone agreed on one thing. What happened that day wasn't about television. It was about humanity. Emily's story began as a search for her father, but it became something deeper, a search for grace, for empathy, for peace with imperfection. Because sometimes the legacy of truth isn't about what it exposes, but what it rebuilds after the silence. Her final journal entry read, I can't change the lies that built me, but I can decide what truths I build next. And maybe that's what forgiveness really is, not erasing the past, but choosing to love yourself in spite of it. Because in the end, the secret wasn't the enemy. Silence was. Would you choose the painful truth if it meant saving someone else's peace? If this story moved you, Share it with someone who's carrying a secret they're afraid to face. Sometimes the truth doesn't break us, it frees us. And if you've ever survived a truth that changed everything, tell your story in the comments. You never know whose heart it might heal next.